Hello and welcome to the Scottish Roadscast, a podcast all about Scotland's roads, bridges and motorways. I'm Stuart.
And I'm John.
John, so good to see you. How are you?
I'm very, very well, Stuart. It's nice to be doing a podcast where it's just the two of us.
It is. It's just you and me here in SRA HQ. It's like old times.
Like the old days, indeed.
It is indeed. Now, you have a very interesting topic for us this month. It's a while since we've really covered this type of topic. The last few podcasts we've been talking a lot about route histories and anniversaries and things. This one's more about policy and, well, you tell us.
Okay, well, Stuart, you have alluded to it the right way because this is a slightly different podcast than usual in that we need, I feel, to have a discussion about the very essence of car travel. And some of the discussions swirling around now by the kind of policymakers, engineers, academics, on our kind of relationship with the car, how we travel, and the spaces where we kind of live and work. So it is a bit of a discussion coming forward on this one, but I've come up with the idea based on a recent BBC Sounds episode, which you will be familiar with, called, was it Glasgow Motorway City?
Yes, that was the one. It went out on BBC Radio 4 one Saturday night at the start of February of 2024, but is now available on BBC Sounds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, we're on this one. They do use some contemporary clips from yourself, but they have used some old clips from us back from a BBC documentary in 2015.
That's right. So I was asked if I would give a contribution to the documentary, which I did, covering the sort of history of the Glasgow motorway system and how it all came to be. And as you say, they used a clip of us from the Scotland at Work documentary that you and I were involved in way back in 2015.
Back when I had hair.
Yes.
That's how you can date
and
things.
I had colour in mine.
I know, no just for men back then, eh?
No, exactly.
So the synopsis of this BBC Sounds thing was it was generally a look at the Glasgow motorway system, getting various viewpoints from the people. I think they even had John Cullen in there.
Yeah, there was some archive footage of John Cullen.
Archive thing, which, obviously John Cullen's no longer with us, so it was nice to hear him again in this. But they covered everything right up from, how the Glasgow motorway system came to be, up to what happened in the 1990s with, building of the M77. Yeah. But as I listened through it, I found there was quite a bit of emphasis in this, and especially how it finished, and this is my opinion, on the critiques of the Glasgow motorway system. Okay. Now, going forward with this podcast, obviously there are going to be some opinions that I'm going to hold on this, which don't necessarily reflect the rest of the archive, its membership.
So we're in for a wild ride,
We're in for a wild ride, and when everything comes with a disclaimer, you're going to be in for a jolly good listen, people.
Oh dear.
But also saying that, I'm not forcing my ideology on others, but we do seriously need to discuss and reflect on the fact that when it comes to kind of cars in towns and the travel conveniences that we've traditionally enjoyed, you know what, Stuart? We might be wrong, as people who find the car convenient, who travel in these ways, and all the arguments that go around, maybe we're the ones that are wrong, or I'm the one that's wrong.
Okay, interesting. So,
that's why I've thought of it that way. Okay, bit of a preface then. So, you and I, and we have a membership in Duncan and Wojciech, and so we've all kind of worked on this. But traditionally, we've built up our archive initially around the study of the roads and motorways in Glasgow. And over time, we have broadened out to include all of Scotland, becoming the Scottish Road Archive that we know and love. And so much work still to be done on that. We have traditionally viewed the road system in Glasgow and its network of urban motorways as a tremendous engineering achievement.
Which it is.
It is, yeah, but also from a personal perspective, something we find quite convenient to use.
As road users in the Glasgow area, yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, and certainly some people would share that in saying that, you can get around anywhere on a motorway in Glasgow. And not just that, the very reason why we're here to talking about it, because we find it interesting.
Well, very much so, yeah.
Look at it from a historical perspective. So you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of the reasons, as you say, why the archive was founded, because we had that sort of genuine interest in why does Glasgow have this extensive network of urban motorways, not just motorways, urban motorways,
Yeah.
which you don't necessarily see in the other big UK equivalent cities like Manchester, Liverpool, Sheffield. All right, Liverpool's got, Leeds has got its own inner ring road motorway, but it's like a dual carriageway.
They're
isn't
not
it?
really networks.
No.
They're not really networks. So Glasgow kind of, when compared to these other cities, is sort of unique in that front.
Yeah.
Now, can you remember, Stuart, when you first became interested in this, even probably as a child or a teenager?
Very much so.
Very much so. And would you say that your enthusiasm and the way you present your interest in this has probably evolved over time?
Of course.
I'm going to admit this, but I was a bit more giddy about it when I first became involved in it, because you just naturally are with these things.
Yeah.
But over time, as we come to work with these systems,
Yeah.
and our viewpoints can sometimes change.
Of course.
So we were giddy, we were enthusiastic about this, and then we've gone over time to look at other things, and we do still appreciate it for what it is.
Well, the Glasgow Motorway Collection is still the biggest single part of our archive.
It is.
It's always going to be the biggest single part. Even of Scotland's road system, if you take the whole lot of it, the Glasgow Motorway System and Expressway Network is the biggest single piece of infrastructure for roads in the country anyway. So that's...
And there you have it, people. Anyone out there who accuses us of being quite biased towards Glasgow, it's probably why, because we have so much stuff on it.
Absolutely.
But I'd love to be able to replicate that for elsewhere in the UK, but it's trying to handle the amount of stuff we're getting in at the moment.
Exactly.
The archive is growing more than we let on, put it that way.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
but anyway, thinking back to my point, we're out, as that BBC Sounds had a kind of a bit of a clip of us, driving around the network and pointing these things out. That was 10 years ago. That was then. This is now. And I'm sure you're aware, the zeitgeist is that we really should be reducing car miles, especially when it comes to urban areas, and looking at other means of transportation under this nebulous term of sustainability, you know. But what does that mean in this day and age? If I say to you, Stuart, you need to travel more sustainably, what do you think of when you think of sustainability and travel?
The first thing that comes to mind is, for me, that means using an electric vehicle almost, because it's not using a fossil fuel, to make it work. Or public transport.
Yeah.
The use of public transport, mass transportation. That to me sounds like something that's
I'm glad you can answer, because I don't know what that means. I see these diagrams where it's like, look how much space a car takes up on a road compared to like a bicycle, or look how many people you can get on a bus compared to a whole lot of cars. Yeah. And when put in that visual format, you think, well, that is a fair point, but there's obviously disadvantages to maybe taking a bus over a car, or cycling when it comes to driving or whatever. So it's not exactly apples for apples. But I don't know really what this sustainability thing means. Maybe you're right. It's about an environmental impact.
Well, see, the whole basis of sustainability as a thing is that we don't affect the future by making poor decisions now, or using, too many materials. You know what I mean?
That's a good dictionary way of looking at it. Yeah. So we're not almost like that's selfish.
We don't exploit the present at the
expense of the
future. Exactly.
Okay, that covers off that you have defined that actually quite well. But let's think about these current discussions that are going on now. We know there are things about removing parts of the M8 or downgrading certain roads.
There's been some
discussions on this, and certainly Glasgow's not unique in that. That some other cities have looked at, and some cities have even done it. Yeah. It's this downgrading of our high-quality roads. A lot of this infrastructure was put in the 60s and 70s. People have seen it as more of an eyesore, a burden. And look at these, and these roads and these systems mostly catering, of course, for vehicular traffic. And I think a lot of these arguments that are going around, the way that I've seen them, they are well-intentioned. There's no malice in it. Because they're around, curbing air pollution, making streets safer, and improving the environment of places we work and travel. However, I would like to give you an example. in Glasgow, of course, why I think we are perhaps going down a path where we've got a kind of a solution in what some people are proposing, searching for a problem. So I'm going to give you a case study. And I told you about this the other day. You've got that face on you, Stuart, because you've forgotten what I've said to you about this. But the other weekend, I drove to Pollok Park, okay, in Glasgow.
Uh-huh.
I went to the Burrell collection, which is fantastic, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 of us in the car, and it was a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I left my house in West Lothian, which admittedly is very close to the M8.
Yeah.
Okay. Got on the motorway and went on my journey. In this journey, I encountered very little congestion, and my journey was interrupted only once by a set of traffic lights at the top of a slip road on the M77 at Dumbreck.
Okay.
Okay, I didn't even have to contend with a roundabout or any pedestrian crossing. It was this uninterrupted journey of slip roads and motorways with blue signs above me. And as far as journeys go, it was the very opposite of a faff. We left the house in our own time, and my dad, who is getting on in his years now, can't walk very far. This mode of travel by car kind of suited us perfectly.
So it was a very convenient method of travel for you on that particular day. Okay.
I left a whole other county, went straight into, or past the city centre to somewhere south of the city centre, got off the top of a slip road, and I was pretty much there. So with that scenario, isn't that, Stuart, an example of a society that has achieved the ultimate goal of convenience and thus brought ease and comfort to its people?
The problem there with that argument is that there are quite a few people who don't have access to that convenience.
So you say don't own a car?
Yes. And Glasgow, being a city with problems, social issues and whatnot, has a high proportion of residents that don't have access to a private car.
But okay, so I've made that journey, but has that come at the expense of those people who don't own a car?
Some would say...
We will cover this later, so don't go too in depth.
Yeah. Some would say the fact that the road runs close to those communities means that they are suffering at the expense.
But if that road wasn't there, I might never have made that journey.
Which is a whole other argument about economics
and other things to do. I know. But the weird thing is, Stuart, and maybe I shouldn't, you're going to tell me I'm being silly, but I actually now suddenly feel bad. Not because of what you've said, but with all these discussions about, I feel like I'm somehow selfish because I use a car. I feel bad, I genuinely do, for indulging in something that I've been doing for years. Maybe indulging's not quite the right word, but just doing it because the roads are there. They're there to be used. They're there to be used. And
are you doing anything wrong? No.
No.
Are you?
It is. I mean, the thing is, though, is that there's people who are advocating these big changes in how we travel, and they always hear this term, reducing car miles. Yeah. And I always think of that as don't ban cars, but more it's a case of like, do I really need a car? Or maybe I should only go to here and then take public transport from here.
Well, so I guess in that sort of a scenario, right, the journey you made probably wouldn't be one that would be seen to be unnecessary or outlaw. You were making a visit to a specific destination that's difficult to access by public transport from where you live. And not only that, you were transporting an elderly relative to that venue.
Yes.
Therefore, the car was the most convenient way for you to do that.
Yeah.
In your car, you also had 3 adults, right? So the car wasn't just a single occupant.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a commute. It was a leisure trip.
Well, that's it. So, there are different types of journeys as well, isn't
I know. I forgot to say there was another benefit. I stopped and got milk on the way back.
Right. Okay.
So there was a quick thing that I could do there.
Right.
But
is that bad? Is that wrong?
That's it. And it's like, am I selfish for doing that? Am I the dinosaur that's so wedded to his car that I need to change? And these are certain kind of questions that are coming up in my head, and I think maybe need discussed.
Again, the particular journey that you outline is sort of stands out from that, doesn't it? Because the Burrell Collection is a big venue that people visit from all over the country, from all over the world. So it was the easiest way for you to get there. I don't think that's a problem. If, however, you were driving, say, 40 minutes to go to the supermarket, 4 times a week or whatever, is that essential? Is that the sort of thing that we should be trying to undo by providing more facilities in the local neighbourhood? You'll be aware of the concept of 20-minute neighbourhoods that the Scottish Government have been looking into recently, where the majority of the things that you need in your life
are within 20 minutes.
20 minutes, which means you don't really need the car. You can walk there within 20 minutes. So it's about you're reducing your car journeys and your car miles there, aren't you?
I need you suggest now walk back with 6 bags of shopping. That's not going to happen.
No.
This is the thing. Is it like there's always this thing with the car? You think, oh, we should maybe just get the train or get the bus, or maybe we should walk. And then you think, no, because I've got to lug that around, or I've got to need this, or what if it starts raining? I mean, this is February we're talking about here, where the weather is very, very changeable. But this is the other part of the argument is all the people who are advocating against this. Are we forgetting about how convenient the car is? Are we maybe not appreciating how good it is? Or maybe the people putting these arguments forward don't even own cars. They don't know what they're missing. Is that we have something great here, Stuart. We have something door to door, and why am I feeling bad about it? And this is the thing. Perhaps if we're heading for a post-car world and there is nothing we can do about it, that's the way it's going to be. But I think it's something that's worth discussing, because I don't think I'm alone in these views, but I only ever hear the views that seem to oppose the convenience of the car, never the ones that advocate for it. And I don't know why that is.
Well, because any group on any matter anywhere on the planet Earth that has an interest in opposing something or having a particular viewpoint in something is always going to be quite vocal about it.
Yeah, even though they might not represent everyone.
Well, that's right, and I guess that's ultimately the case with not just this issue, but a lot of other issues. But I also have to make the point that you speak about the convenience of it and the access to it, which is all good, but we also have to bear in mind that there are significant proportions of people who don't have access to it, and that they suffer as a result of that, because
the infrastructure laid down to support that.
That's
sort
right.
Of thing.
Know, so you could almost say that you have proportions of society that are excluded from that convenience just because they can't afford the car or because they don't have access to the car.
That's a good word. Okay.
And how do you address that wider issue? And then in the case of the M8 in particular, I think the basis of a lot of the argument is, okay, it's an urban motorway.
Yeah.
And urban motorways have never been popular. Never. I mean, you can go back to the late 60s.
Well, they've been popular in this household up to a point, when we've been discussing things.
Well, that's right. But when you think of the sort of a general public's view of that, now you're talking about how we see them as popular. That's from the unique engineering features of them as a thing.
Yeah.
Right? We're fascinated by them because they are so different, because they are so rare in this country.
Yeah.
Right? For that reason. So that's why they're fascinating to us. Why does Glasgow have it? Why does no one else have it?
Yeah.
All right? But even then, if you go back to the late 60s, the early 70s, there was a vociferous debate on the impact of urban motorways
particularly on London.
Absolutely. On the local population. Now, Glasgow had a unique opportunity in the sense that they were remoulding, rebuilding, reshaping entire communities to suit their vision of the future.
Well,
and that meant being able to slot some of these roads in between. However, where that worked in some cases, it didn't in others. Say, for example, Charing Cross, where the motorway was built through an existing community that wasn't being reshaped in this new style, this new modern outlook. And people who live in that area who are impacted by the presence of the motorway obviously have a very strong viewpoint on it. And that's the other side.
And probably quite a qualified view because they live there.
Your convenience is almost impacting upon their community.
Okay.
Right? So you have to bear in mind that there's that side of the argument as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Just playing devil's advocate here.
It's all right. Just for the listeners' clarity, I'm not drawing Stuart any evil looks here, and neither is he doing it to me. Right, very simple question. No, it's actually not a simple question, but I want you to answer it in a simple way, I suppose, Stuart. Is looking at Glasgow, we as we've said, there are more motorways, miles of urban motorways in Glasgow than any other city.
Yeah.
Hence motorway city and all these kind of things. And I explained this journey, and I came in on the M8. and I went off on the M77. So I used the urban motorway network for this journey.
Did you use the Monkland motorway,
Yes.
the Inner Ring Road, and the Kingston Bridge?
I did.
You did. Okay, that's
Yeah,
an interesting choice that you didn't choose to use the M73 and the M74.
Well, I figured there was no congestion, and it was okay at that
Okay.
time of day when I went through.
Fair point.
But why this urban motorway network in Glasgow? Why was Glasgow sort of special? Why didn't they do this in Edinburgh and other things like that? What's your quick answer, just for people who need to be brought up to speed? I, of course, know the answer. So why did this all get built, and why is it convenient to the car?
As outlined in the contribution to the documentary, Glasgow had some unique challenges, and it had a unique opportunity, right?
Right.
So the nature of the Glasgow conurbation is that everything is funneled through the middle of the valley, right? We've got hilly ground to the south, hilly ground to the north, and this extensive valley down the middle where the population is spread out through both the city and the towns and suburban towns, Paisley, Motherwell, Coatbridge, Renfrew, whatever, right? And historically, as a result of that, all of the major routes going from east to west, north to south, either converged within or very near to Glasgow city centre.
Yeah. And its industry was also in the centre as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the impact of that at the time was that all traffic, whether it had a business on the city's residential streets, city centre streets or otherwise, or was longer distance traffic, it was all squeezed into this one area. And the situation was becoming untenable because the roads that the city had at the time, mostly designed and built in the Victorian era, were simply unable to cope with the traffic of the time, and certainly not with what was being predicted for the future. Now, that doesn't necessarily answer the question of why it's urban motorways over anything else, because they could easily have gone for all-purpose dual carriageways or at-grade junctions or any number of things. However, because of this desire, both within the Scottish office, now the Scottish Government, wider UK government policy and the like, this realisation that the traditional industries were dying and that new commuter towns and things were popping up around and new industries were developing, there was a desire to have traffic and goods and people and whatnot all moving very quickly and very efficiently from one end of the country to the other.
Yeah.
And the Scottish office from the early 1960s had a stated aim to replace the substandard A8 trunk road with a new motorway standard route, right? And the reason for that was that kept pedestrians and cyclists and people like that away from the road, and the traffic that had no interest in a particular local area or whatever, that was saying going from the new port at Port Glasgow through to West Lothian to the big industries that were popping up there at that time, they had a nice easy route to do that. Now, there's also the part of the debate about comprehensive development, and Glasgow had this very unique
set of
challenge.
circumstances where a lot of this was being cleared out anyway,
where they had a lot of social deprivation, poor quality housing, and the decision was made by the corporation and its planners at the time that rather than refurbish, renew what you have, make the most of it, it was simply easier to
rebuild,
clear it all away and start again. Because the viewpoint at that time, as we're coming out of the Second World War and even through the 1950s, was everything that's old represented a vision of the city that they no longer wanted to have, of people squeezed into houses, to single rooms and kitchens, all these sorts of things, and they saw these nice new modern high-rise blocks and flats and all these things as being the future. Now, easy with the benefit of hindsight, 60, 70, 80 years later, looking back and going, that was the worst decision ever. However, that opportunity to clear away and start again meant that they could bring in engineers and say, right, okay, you have a unique opportunity here to squeeze in the road system, the best road system that we could possibly have. What should that look like? And of course, the answer at that time was, well, you want an urban motorway with a reasonable speed limit on it that takes away the through traffic from the city streets, but keeps pedestrians and cyclists and other people safe. The other single issue that was a driving force behind a lot of this was that the accident rates on Glasgow's local roads at that time was well above the national UK average, from fatalities,
because you got all these
killed and
trucks thundering down streets and through.
And by providing this new high-quality road system, you removed that problem.
Okay.
So it wasn't just about the movement of goods and people; it was also about improving the safety and the sort of a general operation of these local roads that didn't need that level of traffic. Two good examples Alexandra Parade, which up until 1975 was the main route east out of the city. That now is more residential in character, more
definitely.
like a local high street than a strategic route. Paisley Road West is another good example. And we also have shared images in the past of Bridgeton Cross, on what was the A74 and the A737, where they used to meet, where that was another strategic node in the old network that was very busy, that's now basically traffic free.
Because you've got the M74 and Rutherglen and these places as well.
That was kind of the reason. Now, you did say, well, why did Edinburgh not do it? Well, Edinburgh didn't have those challenges that Glasgow had. And there were some other cities in the UK that did have challenges, but they simply didn't, they weren't as interested in the need for strategic roads. If you think of Liverpool, you think of Birmingham, you think of Manchester. The strategic road network from north to south in England, for example, they were already being served by roads that were much further away from the big conurbations. Like the A1, okay, it skirts a lot of the towns. They had already built bypasses and things through the 1920s and things like that. The A6, okay, not the most efficient route, but it wasn't the thunder and fruit. You didn't have 5, 6, 7 major national roads converging within the one city centre.
Yeah.
Right. So again, some more unique
things
situations in Glasgow, and just the topography and all these things
of where it is. So with that in mind, Stuart, the engineers at the time had quite significant challenges. You've outlined them very well there. That was a good answer. Thank you. And they came up with a solution that solved a lot of these problems for the most part. They built quite a lot of this network.
Yes.
And in light of this, would you know, and these discussions that are going on now, where people are talking about reducing car miles and these motorways being a blight on cities and cars, would you say that this could be short-sighted?
Well,
what was done in the 60s?
I think it's clear from the current debate that's currently playing out that the controversial part of this whole motorway puzzle in Glasgow is the inner ring road. It's the north and west flanks of the inner ring road.
Not exclusively,
no,
because we have had problems with the M77.
Yeah,
the M74.
But the current debate.
The current debate
is focused very much on the inner city section of the motorway.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess that's almost a symptom of the fact that the highway system as proposed was not completed in full.
Yeah.
Because the Charing Cross section of the M8 has become a very important part of what was just supposed to be one section of road. The outer bypasses, the outer ring roads were never constructed, so all traffic is funneled onto this single motorway, the M8, and a bit of M74. So what was supposed to be the quietest section of the Glasgow motorway system, i.e. the northwest corner of the ring road,
Cross,
is now actually one of the busiest parts of the whole motorway system.
Build the other side of it. Some people think, well, thank goodness we never built the other side.
Yeah.
We just sort of had more of the problem then.
And then, of course, there's the wider debate about what would be considered suitable, because the east and south flanks, in my view, were never going to get constructed because of where they were proposed to go.
Yeah.
And then that then takes you back to the debate in the first place about the suitability of the plan and what was built and where it was built. I think the corporation knew what it was trying to do, but the circumstances around all that all changed very quickly, and people's viewpoints changed very quickly. And I guess the debate now is that we've been left with this relic from decisions that were made many, many decades ago, and much has changed.
Much has
since
changed.
then.
Okay. Well, we're going to get back to poor old me, Stuart.
Okay.
And why I still think this infrastructure has a role to play, and dare I say, plays a role in a solution too. Okay. I do feel like I'm being somewhat punished for having a mode of travel that is convenient by the tone of some of these discussions going on right now. Notice I didn't say the word choosing, because we don't really choose to have a car the same way that we choose what to have for dinner, right? We have, for the majority of the population, especially somewhere like Scotland, where let's not forget, it's not just the central belt in Scotland. Where I'm from, in the north of Scotland, rural parts of the country.
Yeah.
You are conditioned basically to get a driving license from a young age and pursue car ownership, because you do not have good public transport options. That's
where I guess there is probably no one-size-fits-all policy as far as private car ownership in Scotland is concerned. Because what works for the towns and the cities would never work for
But they
rural
do cross-pollinate
Scotland.
in terms of there are rural areas surrounding Glasgow, and these rural areas and the people that live in them do need to go to Glasgow
Yeah.
and stuff like that as well. I mean, it's not all completely urban in the Central Belt. And I think when it comes to kind of car ownership, you imagine it. You turn 17, you're getting your driving lessons. Come on, we need to get you through your test. You get a car. I don't really think it's not a bad thing, as a car is an essential means of travel and independence if you're young. And let's be honest here, it increases our job prospects, and you can travel further to get the right job if you do have a car. I'd advise anyone to do it.
That definitely applies to people who grow up in areas that are perhaps not well served by good
Public
alternatives
transport.
in public transport and whatever. Now, you grew up in the north of Scotland,
Yeah.
in a rural community where that's absolutely the case. That for you to have any sense of freedom as a teenager, a young adult, you required access to a car to be able to access the things that any normal young person would
be
like
able
to
to
access. But if you put yourself in the position of, say, a 17 or an 18-year-old person in, say, Glasgow, the East End of Glasgow, or even the West End of Glasgow, who perhaps don't have the same need to access that car, they're on the complete other side of the debate. So they don't appreciate your need for that. Mm-hmm. They just see that they have good, accessible, reliable public transport on their doorstep, and they can make use of that. Now, I guess I'm in a sort of a half and half position.
I was just going to ask you, because you're from Lanarkshire, which is it's a kind of within Greater Glasgow's orbit.
Yeah.
So when did you learn to drive?
Well, I learned to drive when I was 17.
Well, there you go.
Okay, because, and again, it's the same thing, isn't it? That in the sense that if I want to go to Glasgow or any of the other towns in the conurbation during the day, I can do so with absolutely no problem. If I want to do that in the evening, and my work at that time required me to do journeys in the evening, there was simply no way I could do that on public transport. So I've kind of got into that mindset as well. And I also,
in fairness, you use both, because you use the bus to commute if you go in.
I'm a bus commuter. I'm a train user.
Yeah,
regularly, and have been for years. So I don't use the car for
commuting in the traditional sense. Okay. It's another thing. Do you ever hear this, right? The war on the motorists. It's a tabloid favourite, and I don't really believe it, because I don't think, this is me personally, I don't think people should be able to just drive wherever they want, park their cars with gay abandon, and it's my right, and that's it. I don't believe that is a thing. We do need to have control over that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And that, I'm not turning around and saying
it's almost
like America, where you can just drive anywhere.
You remember, we've made this point in podcasts before, that even in those 1960s Glasgow highway documents and reports, it's very clearly stated that they know that they will never allow for unconstrained growth of traffic. Yeah. That's in no one's interests.
So here's the thing, right? This is where I'm going to start getting angry now, okay? Because we hear all this, but when we look at Glasgow, we look at the road system it has with the Clydeside Expressway, the M8, the M74 and the M77, okay? You have an urban road network that actually works, okay, compared to other places. And you think about trying to drive into other towns.
Well,
but it does actually work. But why are we then destroying what is potentially, or proposing to destroy, part of the solution that we already have for many of the contemporary arguments for reducing car travel? We have actually a great solution already in place of keeping a lot of the cars off the streets and enabling cycling, enabling walking.
Because many people would say that they are suffering for your convenience because they have to live next to those roads, which are catering for people coming in from the suburbs or beyond into the city. Now, the other side of the argument, and others would say, well, you're keeping that traffic away from the residential streets and things in that area. But then there's things like noise, there's pollution, there's all these other things that come with that the only people who live next to it can really fully appreciate, And you just thundering through at 50, 60 miles an hour, you're getting no real sense of what that might be like living in your nice airy, commuter belt town, new development with a lot of space.
Hold on a minute. I used to live next to the M8. I know what it's like. That was a rural part of the M8. I know what it's like. But this is a good segue, because this always comes up, and you've mentioned it a couple of times, Stuart, so the listeners have it embedded in their brains now as this sort of inequality there, where it's like people are travelling through areas where road traffic doesn't benefit. I'm going to challenge it. Okay?
Okay.
So motorway placement and low car ownership, this comes up. So an argument I find particularly frustrating is this one of low car ownership in an area that a road or a strategic or regional importance kind of passes through.
Mm-hmm.
Do people honestly think that they only exclusively build roads to service the area that they pass through? They don't. Okay, so a road goes from A to B and passes through and links up areas along that route. And while having a road go through an area might not be the most pleasant thing aesthetically or, environmentally, they do bring wider benefits in terms of trade, business connections, and these safety improvements. So if you were, say, living somewhere along where the M77 corridor was in the south side, before it was built, and all this traffic was thundering to Ayrshire through there, then that traffic is then taken away by the M7. And you might not own a car, but it will have brought you an improvement. And this comes up on that BBC Sounds podcast. I heard many kind of snippets from that time of, when they were building the M77. And that was in the mid-1990s, where people were saying, quite a lot of the protesters, local ones at least, voiced their concerns about low car ownership in like the Moss Park area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You recall this. Now, as far as motorways go, let's just focus on the M77 and moving away from the ring road here.
Uh-huh.
The M77 is one of the most sensitively constructed, I certainly believe. It went through the very edges of Pollock Park and involved very little demolition of any properties or houses as it went along to accommodate it. Not to mention it's landscaped and set in such a way that it kind of complements the environment. It fits in quite well.
But thinking about it from what their point of view would be, right?
So sorry, that argument of mine was too compelling for you to object to.
The A77 in its old form went through some of the more affluent parts of the south side of Glasgow. Busby, Cathcart, Newton Mearns, right? Clogged every day, congested, because all those people, all the wealthy people in the south side of the city travelling towards the city centre, clogging up the A77. We'll solve that problem. Yeah. We'll build a new motorway that's much further west than the old road. Mm-hmm. It just skirts along the side of
Pollock Park.
It just skirts along the side of Ardennes. Okay, that's fine. So suddenly you're taking tens of thousands of vehicles and taking them off away from all the nice, wealthy.
Oh, right. So just because those people happen to be wealthy, then they're not. Then they're not entitled to a right to have a better environment and a car-free thing. I can understand Charing Cross and Garnet Hill to a degree, but I cannot understand Pollock.
Well, what about Nitz Hill then? Take Nitz Hill as the example. Junction 3, the M77, but it passes pretty closely to property, right? Up until 1996.
Right.
Those people didn't have all those vehicles every day, either using the old road to get to the junction that then appeared there, or passing by in the motorway. So all the noise, or the dust, or the particulate matter, all the things that comes with car travel or vehicles on the motorway. They didn't have that problem because it was someone else's problem miles away. Why should that be inflicted upon them?
Well, where else are you going to put
it? When they're not
the
ones using that because they don't have access to the cars. They didn't have access to cars. No. Most people in that area still don't have access to cars. It's well below the national average. So you have to understand, I guess, that part of the argument as well.
I do to a degree, but then why are they all quiet about it now? And it's the same with the 74, is that there was moaning about when they were wanting to complete the M74 and they built it and everyone went, oh, this is actually wonderful. And you can look at what it's done to places like Rutherglen or Cambuslang, and the 77 to a degree, they're not complaining about it now. This is the thing, it's almost like you don't know how good it is until you get it. And you know who's the same with this? The people in Edinburgh when it comes to the trams.
Okay.
They complained because they were going to build trams.
Okay.
Then they complained while they built the trams.
Okay.
Now they complain because the trams don't go far enough, if you know what I mean. And it's same sort of with these motorways, is like, we don't want this here, and then it comes in, and actually with the 77, the way it fits in the environment, it was better. Overall, utilitarian, looking at it, it was better for the whole area.
Well,
and it has brought an opportunity, but I mean, they got a fantastic big Sainsbury's at Junction 3. These businesses don't just come along, without it. And this is progress. It's development.
It's a very interesting point of view that you're giving today. And I'm sure there are lots of people who
But it needs to be said, I think. And I think when I heard it on this BBC Sounds thing, I think, well, if we have this attitude of, because I don't have this and I don't benefit from it, then it shouldn't be here. And then it's just like, well, if you had that attitude, you'd never build anything ever, anywhere, It's like a railway line going by. Well, I don't use the train.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, but it needs to go somewhere. So that's my argument. Right. Going to move on.
I'm scared to know where you're taking us next, to be honest. But okay.
We need to talk about realistic alternatives to the car. If that's the way it's going to go, we're charted on this sort of path where we need to reduce car miles. So I'm a big fan of Glasgow's suburban rail network and its subway. You know
it's
that.
very impressive.
It's it's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're big fans of it. I believe in transport systems that are convenient and wide-reaching, combined with sort of park and ride facilities, so they kind of complement road infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best method of travelling to Glasgow, this is me personally, right? If I'm going to the west end of the city centre, is I drive into Shields Road subway and I park the car there, and that uses the motorway network, takes me right in, straight off the M74. You've got 2 sets of traffic lights and you're straight in there. Again, a very good journey. You get on the subway, it's rapid transit, and it's very, very quick.
Right. Okay.
Now, if we go back to the 1960s and the plans for the road improvement back then, there was talk and there was action,
Mm-hmm.
The engineers of the time and the corporation, look, this is what we want, this is what we're going to do, and they built it. They said what was going to do and they done something about it. But today's supposed problem solvers to the city's transport issues, particularly ones who are advocating things like maybe removing the motorways or installing this sort of project here where we put avenues in, or we bring in this certain public transport thing. They're very good at talking about it, but don't offer any pragmatic ways of actually implementing them, which I think is a bit of a critique I'm doing down here, you can probably tell. So the Clyde Metro is a good example where it's a fantastic idea. Admittedly, it is a rehash of a lot of old stuff, where it's previous tram, light rail proposals, but nonetheless a good idea, but with no money or scope to actually achieve it in a reasonable way that we can all fathom. As much as we have a go at people in Edinburgh, at least they're getting on with the trams. At least that is going somewhere. I don't see this Clyde Metro happening anytime soon. And this is something we need to talk about. So the Clyde Metro, as I said, I'm quite keen on it. Just to give everyone a rundown, is proposing to have light rail, heavy rail, which they call light metro or heavy metro, they call it, to access areas poorly served currently by rail, such as the new hospital, Renfrew, the airport, as well as conversion of some traditional heavy rail services on the south side to a kind of metro rapid transit surface. There are also plans to put a tram-like system into the East End and up into Easterhouse, which is again kind of very similar to Strathclyde tram proposals of the 80s and 90s, which I feel is a great idea to kind of link those parts of town with other parts, because they are poorly linked by public transport. Mm-hmm. So I asked Stuart, where are the timelines and, more importantly, the finances coming for such a big and fantastic project such as this? We don't really know. And instead, what I find frustrating is that energies and resources are being directed to impacting the urban motorway network, and in my opinion, not just for not for the better. So if you look at the M8, the M74, and the M77, we've spoke about the benefits that these do provide. Just now, so why not really leave these alone and focus on the public transport solutions? And this is where some of the money and thought should be. I think that, as I said earlier, they're trying to create a problem to justify the solution that is something like a metro system by means of a managed decline or an outright kind of deliberate restraints on the existing road system. Is this an opinion I have? If we aren't careful, we could sleepwalk our way into a situation where we've wrecked our road network and provided no improvement to public transport in the process. A worst of all worlds scenario. Yes, there would be less cars, but there will also be less business and economic activity. So if you can imagine it, big restrictions going on, all parts from everything from speed limit restrictions, closing of things, but then no viable alternative, and you've ended up in a worse situation than you were before. So, are we still wrong? What do you reckon the way this discussion is going? You look very thoughtful, very pensive.
It's a very difficult subject matter, because what works for you doesn't necessarily work for the person who has to live next to such a road. And I'm sure even you can understand why that some people who live next to the big busy urban sections of road would prefer to see them removed.
As a whole, is having a good road network a bad thing.
No, because there's always going to be a need for roads of some kind.
Yes.
But at the same time, those roads have to be sympathetic to the areas that they're passing through,
but they have been
okay
in the cases of Glasgow, or as sympathetic as they can be.
Yeah.
You know, we've spoken about quite a lot of that at length.
Missed completely, from my sort of point of view, the fact that a lot of these roads aren't functioning particularly well at peak times.
So they're busy.
They're very busy. They're congested. There's far too much traffic on them.
Well,
and you know, it's not all perfect. It's not all rosy. You know,
no, it's not.
Yeah.
We've said there was a reason for that, though, because the whole network wasn't constructed as such. But let's focus on your point of it being busy. People are voting with their feet, okay? And if all the academics and planners are correct in feeling the need to reduce car miles in urban areas, then why do we go out each day and see this congestion all the time and see such high utilisation of the road network? Why?
Because people have to work.
They have to work. The results speak for themselves. We do have actually quite a convenient system in Glasgow from the outset of it. I can see why people might really give up in a place like Edinburgh and think, I've never taken the car. And rightfully so. Yeah. But in Glasgow, there is still that sort of, you look at it and think, yeah, I've got the M8, I've got the M74, I should be able to worm my way through this at peak time.
But you're talking about the Glasgow region, the city region as they talk about now, not the city itself.
Yeah.
Right? But it's the Glasgow city centre that's suffering as a result of your movements cross-conurbation, right? But
I'm not going into the city centre grid.
No, but what I mean is you're passing through the city centre area in terms of your vehicle passing along the motorway, the noise that's produced by that, the fumes or whatever that are coming from your vehicle, or if it's electric, that's not so much of an issue, fair enough. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? That there's a lot of traffic from outside the city is passing through the city on the road system, the motorway system, and that impacts upon the residents that are nearby it. But let me pose a question to you. Right, so you travel every day from West Lothian to the south side of Glasgow, okay, for work. What would it take to get you to make that journey by other means?
Okay, I'd have to drive to the station. The nearest station to me is a 45-minute to an hour walk.
Okay, and what's the driving distance, say? And does it have a park and ride facility?
It's got a car. Yeah, it does. It has a car park.
Okay, there. And then you would then take a train from there to central Glasgow.
To Queen Street.
Okay, and how would you make the final part of the journey from Queen Street to your place of work?
Very good question. There's no railway stations at where final place of work, but I believe I'd need to walk across to possibly Buchanan bus station, get a bus from there. And then
take a bus. Okay.
Or George Square.
So, what could anyone do that would make that a more attractive proposition to you than simply getting in the car and going straight from A to B?
Brilliant question. That's the problem. If I was to choose that, but think, we could provide a station nearer you, or we could have some kind of other light rail system or tram system that would take me to there. And all of these things, in some way, they're never going to be as convenient as the car.
From a policymaker's point of view, they know that there's very little they can do to cater for the specific journey requirements of every person on the road. So the easiest thing for them to do is to make use of the car less convenient for you, to force the other option upon you. Thereby, or at least make you consider it.
Yeah, thereby disadvantaging me in terms of the amount of time that I'd have to spend commuting. Now, I'm an able-bodied person, Stuart.
Yeah.
But let's consider someone who's older. Let's consider someone who might stay even further away, or someone who has disabilities. Policies surrounding maybe restricting cars or making things more difficult for cars can be discriminatory in some ways.
But, and the other side of the point...
He's pointing now.
Here, the other side of the argument here is that people in those sorts of positions could be said to be someone who is a legitimate user of a car because they require that for their independence. Right. You, as a young, fit, able-bodied person, as you just described yourself, are not so dependent on that option. And if the numbers of vehicles and traffic on the roads reduce, then life is made easier for people who do need to use the roads because they do depend on it.
By freeing it up.
Absolutely.
You know.
And not only that, for people in buses and other forms of transport that are dependent on using the roads. So it ultimately all comes back to your selfishness.
I was going to
almost.
say you're going to say laziness because you can't be bothered walking.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that. And there's other factors like weather and things that need to be considered.
Absolutely.
But it ultimately comes back to
and stuff you need to bring with you to work. Almost
your selfishness, your privileged viewpoint. No, hang on. Let me put it to you. That you feel that you think you should just have unrestricted access to the road system because you have the ability to have a car, to use a car. Why should I have to suffer? Right now, that's one side of the argument, but that has an adverse effect on other people who are excluded from that particular option.
I don't
for
think
a whole number of reasons.
I actually don't think so. I think in many ways, like if I have that way of getting to work, and genuinely it isn't much of a choice at the moment based on where it is, and the concessions that I would have to take if I wasn't to drive would be too great. In for me, it would affect me quite a lot. Is that other people? It doesn't really disadvantage them because if they don't have a car and so they just make their own means, they don't. What I'm trying to say is they almost don't know what they're missing out on.
Okay, so back to my original question to you then: what would it take to stop you using the car? Would it be a financial implication or a penalty? Would it be a
I don't want to give them any ideas.
Implication or a penalty? Would it be a mixture of both?
It's definitely, I'd say, time.
Okay, so it's more about more about the convenience.
It's more about the convenience than the fun. I'm not saying because I'm loaded or something.
Okay,
it's just that time to me is money as well. You know, and going, gosh, I can get home from work in 35 minutes.
Yeah.
If I was to take public transport, it'd be an hour and a half, or it would be nearly 2 hours or something like that. And that's, you only have a finite amount of life. That's less time you get to spend with your loved ones and your family and things like that.
No, you're right. I think what's obvious here is that there's no one single answer.
There isn't.
There are always going to be people who end up living next to urban motorways who are suffering as a result of that, which is clear. Okay, the other side of that argument is, of course, why did they move there? Because the chances are they are younger than the road. That's one side of it. I know you would probably hit back on that. But ultimately they're there. They may not have the choice to be anywhere else. And then there's the convenience of others and whether your convenience should trump the inconvenience for the person who lives next to it. It's a huge debate. There is no simple answer.
Cars are great, though. I mean, I said it earlier, this door-to-door, and you mentioned about weather as well, and stuff, and you can carry things about. Why are we kind of going backwards? Why are we like, this isn't great? And I know you're saying, well, the space they take up and other things, but this is maybe we can't resolve this, but it's just that it's like, I feel like we're taking a step back here.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I think I know what you're saying.
I
know what you're saying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone should have to jump in a car to maybe get that. And I think a lot of people putting these arguments live in a nice part of town where they get this easy public transport and they hop out their flat in the West End with a folding bike and pedal down to their work and everything's perfect and rosy. Why can't the whole city be like that? Well, guess what? Not everyone lives right next to the subway.
Yeah. Indeed. Yeah, that's a big part of the argument. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
I think, looking at the clock, I'm probably running out of a bit of time here.
You are indeed. You have ranted for almost an hour now.
That's still not close to your record, so I have more in there, but I think the point comes across without this becoming boring. So I think I'm just going to wrap it there. But are we wrong? Maybe we don't know about this. Maybe it's, as you say, such a big argument.
You say, are you wrong? You mean, are you wrong about enjoying your unlimited access to the car and the convenience of it?
Yes.
I don't know if you're wrong, but I don't know if you're right either.
Yeah.
But why are you any more right or any more wrong than someone on the other side of the argument?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. There's no easy way to deal with this.
Yeah.
We have limited resources. We can't provide for everybody's possible journey options and solutions. That just would be unviable. But there has to be surely a balance there that can be reached between people that need to use private cars.
Yes.
Right? Not want to use private cars, need to use private cars, and those who expect more and better public transport and a better existence away from motorways and stuff. Yeah.
No, there we go. And in the meantime, we're probably going to need more motorways and roads to accommodate this.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people probably gasped there at that. I would suggest that you're probably wrong on that point.
Just to paraphrase what I was going to say at the end of this about what the actual... Because I've gone critiquing what people's solutions are, so it's only fair I say is that we do still need to focus on improving the nation's roads. We do still need to focus on safety improvements and capacity improvements. But at the same time, there needs to be proper planning, politically proof planning, for improving public transport like metro systems, maybe in the same vein as something like
So you mean cross-party agreement?
Cross-party agreement. This is a 30-year plan for providing a comprehensive cycling and walking network here, a comprehensive light rail system here, not just some token cycleways that are put in that no one uses, or public transport systems that will never see the light of day that are too expensive for anyone to use. They need to think about this seriously.
Okay, before we wrap up, I'm very interested to hear what the listeners think. Are you on your own on this?
Okay.
Are you in the minority? Am
I going mad?
A lot of people who listen to this, are they in the same position?
Yeah. I might just be the dinosaur here, so I do want to hear what people think. They might say, "No, Stuart has a point, that guy's an idiot."
You never know.
Or you know what, I might have created a whole new religion here, to be honest, and people agree with me. I do have a feeling that I do... There's probably a kind of silent majority of people that sit out there and go, well, now that you put it that way, yeah, that's probably my barriers to not giving up the car.
Okay. You've got 10 seconds to make any final points.
No, all I want to say is thank you very much for letting me talk about this, and it's been great to debate with you about it and get your viewpoints.
It's been a while since we had the podcast that sort of looked at these kinds of issues and
I think it's good it's just you and I as well. Maybe we should involve someone else with another viewpoint on this at some point.
That would make for a very interesting podcast. And you know what? Why not? Why not? Why not? There are other opinions here.
We'd have to have a referee or a moderator, of course, but
I'm sure I could handle that.
Okay.
Anyway, Thank you for that, John. Clearly, you have very strong views on that. That has come across very clearly. You wanted to get that.
Yeah,
on the
views are
strong.
I'm not an extremist, but I thought these things just needed to be said in light of what was saying.
Fair enough. Certainly a long way for this debate to go before there's any answers to it. Anyway, we're done for this episode. We'll be back very soon with another one. All episodes are available wherever you'll find good podcasts. Search for the Scottish Roadscast and it'll come up. You're listening already. You've found it already. Don't need to tell you that. Leave us a review, please. It's always good to get some feedback on what we're doing.
Give us a like if you're on YouTube, or a comment.
Absolutely.
Subscribe.
And of course, the social media channels are still being updated every single day of the week with multiple posts. You've got some new then and now posts coming out over the next few weeks.
You've got a fantastic new batch of photos that are finding their way out there, which never been seen before from somebody's personal collection.
Indeed. And Duncan has some great images from up north, both current and historic. There's some car spotting posts coming down the line as well, and we're working on various other things. So we're very busy in the background. So I think all that's left to say, John, is thank you again.
Thank you. But we have to say thank you to our sponsors.
Yes, we should.
To Nigel and the team at HBS.
And Andy and the team, of course, at Eastwood Excavations as well.
Thank you, guys. That's the reason why we can do this is because of the support that you do.
Indeed. Okay, so on that note, thank you, and we will see you again very soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.